Hey guys, JC Smith here. Today we're going to be working on this International. It's an 08, it's got a DT466. It may look familiar to some guys because they watched this in the live stream as we brought it home. I bought this a little while ago, and me and Brandon and my wife went up and we picked up this truck, the rollback I just bought, and an F550 that we just unloaded off the trailer. This thing, we went to go pick it up, we went to go start it. It cranked a little longer than I thought it should before it started, which, you know, I was aware of that ahead of time when I bought it, but it renting space in the back of my head, just something I noticed. We drove it in, drove great. Wife had no troubles. In fact, yes, my wife, all of 5'1" and, you know, very little pounds. She's a lady, we don't talk about weight or age. She drove this thing all the way in for me. She parked it at home. I went to go move it, and it wouldn't start. And when it wouldn't start, I kind of had an idea of where we're going with this thing. So, that being said, we're going to get up here and let me show you what it does. I'm going to start it up, because we're going to attempt to fix this without a scanner. It can be done in some applications, not all. First thing we'll do is turn the key on, wait for the cluster to proof out, wait for my wait start light to go out. There we go. Okay, so it starts up, it runs smooth. Alright, so it'll run like that as long as you have the key on. But as soon as you shut it off, it won't restart until you let it sit overnight and let it cool down. Alright, so first thing we noticed, as soon as I started, the regeneration light's on. Okay, so it's in regen. These things have a problem where they go into regen and the DPF might be plugged or somewhat plugged, and it'll stay in regen and just keep regenerating. And what it does is it uses diesel fuel sprayed from the injectors into the cylinder and shoves it down the exhaust to try and reburn it and burn the soot out of the DPF. So if it gets stuck in regeneration and it can't get the DPF clean, what ends up happening is all that diesel fuel keeps getting sprayed in those last two cylinders, and it washes the cylinders. So you have no oil lubrication for the rings. So you risk, let's see, you could score the cylinder, break a piston ring, crack a piston, thin the oil, and wipe out the bottom of the motor because the engine oil will be thinned with diesel fuel. You know, the list of problems go on and on and on and on. Alright, so what I did when it wouldn't start, knowing that this light was on, I shut it off. Well, when I shut it off, I wouldn't restart. I lift the hood, pulled the oil dipstick, checked it, it wasn't over full, so it wasn't making oil, as we call it, and that's where in the DPF it would be, or in the regeneration cycle, it would be spraying extra diesel fuel and getting past the rings into the oil pan, raising the level. Alright, so it's not doing that, and the oil's doesn't stink like diesel fuel, it's just dirty, and it's not over full. Alright, so this is something we have to take care of. Regardless of what the problem is, we got to fix that too, but we got to fix the no start problem when it's at operating temperature. Alright, so we've run into this before, and I'm inclined to believe that we have a problem in what's called the high pressure oil system. This engine uses kind of like the 7.360 diesel in the pickup truck world. They use that Huey system, like the Caterpillars, which is licensed. International used it from Caterpillar. It was their license. So what it does is it takes engine oil and the low pressure oil pump, like the standard oil pump in the bottom end of the motor, pumps oil. The lubricant pump is what it is. Pumps oil to the high pressure pump. The high pressure pump then takes that low pressure, which this one, the dummy gauge says that, you know, we're getting near 60 pounds of oil pressure. So it takes that 60 pounds of oil pressure and it boosts it up to 500 to make it start. And I think these run a maximum of 5,000 psi, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure, but I think it's a max of 5,000. Alright, so what happens is that pump takes it up to 500 psi, runs it up to the head, and then there's a rail in the head that feeds each injector. Each injector is fed with high pressure oil and then controlled, opened and closed electrically by the PCM. So you can imagine if you have anywhere where you have a leak in this high pressure oil, it can't build pressure, and it won't start, it won't run. Alright, so here's what we know so far. It'll start in the morning when the engine is cool. It'll start right up and run all day long. Alright, if it can run all day long and have good power and all that, I'd like to think that my high pressure pump is okay. That's not where I'm mainly going to be looking at. The first thing I'm going to look at is going to be the under the valve cover. I'm going to be looking at that rail. I'm going to look at what are called the pucks, which go, there's 6 of them because it's a 6-cylinder. They go right above each injector, and they feed that injector with high pressure oil. If one of those O-rings is bad, we'll lose pressure, and it won't let it build pressure. And the significance of when it's hot is because the oil's thinner. So more pressure, more volume of oil can leak past the bad O-ring when it's thinner than when it's thicker. And then there's also something on the rail called a ICP sensor. It's injection control pressure, okay? And what it does is it tells the PCM whether the high pressure oil pump regulator needs to increase pressure or decrease pressure, okay? And it has an O-ring on the back of it, and I've seen them several times break and lose pressure right there. Alright, so now we got it running. I'm going to shut it off. You can see we're running, temperature is still about cold, 140. Alright, so here we go. Completely off. Keys out. Key back in. Turn it back on. Wait for it to proof out. Okay. Now, when it's cranking, typically in one of these engines, when it's cranking, it'll crank it on RPM fairly quick, and you can actually, a lot of times you can tell the difference when the high pressure oil pump starts to make oil pressure, because the RPMs, the cranking RPM slows down just enough to notice. Just enough in the tone that you can hear it. Now this thing you can crank this and crank it until you're blue, and you know, you've run the batteries down and killed it, and it's not going to start. Okay? Because of what because I think of what is wrong. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, so we're going to do this without a scanner. We've done it before. Well, we've run into this problem before, so we're hoping we can fix it without a scanner, without actually scanning it. But I'm going to show you how to get the codes out of an international if it is equipped with this. First off, you turn the key on. This is what would that be? 02 and up international probably. Turn the key on. Alright, and as soon as the cluster does what we call proof out, where it means it's actually testing, doing a self-test. Alright, go to the cruise control, if your truck has cruise control. You push the upper button on this side, the lower button on this side, push them both at the same time, and then the cluster's going to go through its self-test again. Now you're in diagnostic mode. Now this is the display where it shows park, neutral, drive, you know, mileage, all that stuff. Now it's showing you what version of software it has, and now these are trouble codes. SPN is a trouble code, FM1 is what it is, SA is, I think that's the module reporting it. Now it said we had 5 active and 6 total, okay? So it'll hold that for a few seconds, each one of them, and you can write them down and then go from there. A couple of these are because the battery was disconnected. Because the batteries were dead, we changed the batteries out and put an alternator on the truck. So, active occurrence. And this is body control. I think that's in the heater. But that could be because there was fuses unplugged at one time when we were checking a few things on the lights. So anyhow, previously active, this one's not active, is the 2003. So there's a few active codes, but the one that's going to mean something to us is going to show up again. You see the software code revision 6 Vault 7. I thought it was 5 and 6, but I guess I was wrong. 164 FMI1. If I'm not mistaken, that means that it can't build high pressure. So there's our code right there. We didn't need a scanner so far. Now, whatever's going on with this regeneration, I may have to take the DPF off, have it clean, put it back on, and then have a manual forced regeneration done. I'm not sure. We'll see how that turns out. This has where you can do regeneration, parked regeneration here. May not take care of this. I still may have to take this into the dealer, an international dealer, and have them do a forced regen. But anyways, so there's our code. There's what we're thinking. Let's get under the hood. I'll show you what it looks like, what the system looks like. Okay, so here we're under the hood. This is our high pressure oil pump right here. Okay, it runs off of the gears in the front of the motor. It's very hard to see. It's very tight in here and greasy. But there's 4 bolts, one here, and then 2 on the back that hold it in place. And it's supplied with a low pressure oil, and then it comes out this big hose right here, which comes up through here into the head, which goes into that rail I was telling you about. Now I'm going to get that all over me if I don't wipe it off. So what we're going to do first thing is we're going to take that valve cover off. That's the first thing I want to do, so that I can see the ICP sensor and all those hucks. And what we'll do is we'll crank it once I have the valve cover off, and we'll look and see if we have oil squirting anywhere first. That'll be our first thing we do. Alright, it's been a few days now. I'm finally getting ready to dig into this. First thing I did was remove the air cleaner out of the way, down to the turbo, which I'm going to lay a rag in here, stuff that so nothing falls in here. I don't want that getting in the turbo, because the turbo didn't look to be that old. Then I'm going to get the valve cover off. I'm hoping to quickly find a problem, because I don't have a lot of time to really devote to this right now. Okay, I got the valve cover off, so what we're going to do is we're going to crank this here in just a minute. But you can see here, this is how it works. This is the oil rail. The oil comes in from the high pressure oil pump and comes in this cast iron rail. I know it's hard to see, but this cast iron is the oil pressure rail. That's the top of the injector. See it here? And then the coil plugs in right here that controls the injector. And then way back here is the ICP sensor, which you can see right there. A lot of times that'll go bad, or the oil or the O-ring behind the washer will go bad. So what we're going to do is crank it over, and we're going to go injector by injector and look for any oil leaks, one by one. So we'll hope you can see this, maybe not. Go ahead. There it is, right there. Alright, shut it off. Alright, see all that oil? That's the injector that's leaking. It's one of them hucks. Pretty common problem. So we're going to take the oil rail loose across the top of here. We're going to replace those O-rings and put it back together, see if she fires up. Okay, so I got the injectors and the ICP unplugged. We'll just lean this back. I'll take a little bungee cord and hold it out of our way. And then we'll take all these 10mm bolts out and lift the rack up. There's no pressure on this rack because that O-ring has been bleeding it off. Alright, so here's the oil rail. Alright, holds all that high pressure, and there's the ICP sensor we were talking about. And this is the pucks that I've mentioned several times. They screw into the oil rail, and they basically go into the top of the injector, and there's a couple O-rings right there. Okay, you stick a light on it, you can see this one looks in fairly good shape. The backer don't look so good. This one, you see it's got some wear on it, but it's not horrible. And then here's the one that was leaking. As you can see, it's completely blown out, both of these. So that's what we need to do. Now I'm going to call the international dealer, which is where I get these from, and we're going to see if they got enough in stock to do them all, because it's a lot easier to do all this right now than it is to do one, have a problem, do it again. And you can see how they come out. Well, maybe you can. It's a hex drive, but it has to be a hollow hex drive to get it out. It's pretty interesting. But anyways, let's call the international dealer, see if they got them. Let's get them changed out. Okay, so I got the rail upside down on the workbench, and I've changed out all the pucks. Some of them, you can see the O-rings a little beat up here. It's not showing up real well, but you know, I'm glad I did. I'm very happy. And then this is the one that's completely blown out. You see the O-rings blown out, and the backer is gone. So we did all 6 of them, and then I was getting ready to put it back together, and I looked at the ICP sensor again, and there's a cap that goes on here that holds this in here, and it was broken. And I got to thinking about it. It's supposed to look like that, and it clips on there, and I got to thinking, man, I wonder if the oil pressure has been blowing past there and blowing out here, and if this is going to be soon to fail. So I called the international dealer. They had it in stock, so I decided, you know, it was well worth it. We might as well. I really didn't want to, but it's a lot of work to get to this point, you know. So I just decided we'll go ahead and change it out, and we'll use this for testing if we need to. We'll just keep it around. And the other thing we need to do, let me see where it's at here. I got an O-ring somewhere. You don't want to forget to replace this O-ring. This is the O-ring for the feed of the oil rail. It goes right here, okay? This O-ring is hard as a rock. I mean, it's flat. Get over here. It's already flat. It's hard as a rock. It's probably ready to split or break or blow out. So we got a new one. So make sure you get that in. Now we're going to get this ready to go, and we're going to set the rail in, and I'll get it all torqued down and bring it along. Alright, it's all back together. Now let's give it a crank, see if it'll start. Now before, it would only start when it was cold, and then if you shut it off and tried to restart it, it wouldn't restart. Sorry about the lighting in here. It's back in the shop and everything's weird. You know, I got the sunlight coming in this way. Took a little while to get the air out, I guess. Now the injector exhausts through the top, so you still have, when it's running, you have oil coming out because of higher pressure. It runs about 500 psi at idle. What we're going to do, we're going to let this thing warm up. It's only, well, it's cold, so we're going to let it warm up. The way it was before, if it ran for about 5 minutes, you'd go to restart it, it wouldn't restart. So let's let it run, and we'll see if it'll restart. I won't hold you here, I'll bring you back when we're ready to restart it. Alright, it's been running for about 10 minutes right now. It's pretty cool out today, so it's going to take forever to build any temperature. But the oil is warmer, it's thinner. Let's crank it and shut it off, see what it does. I expect this to take a little bit longer to crank up because, you know, it's got 230,000 on the high pressure oil pump still. So I wouldn't be upset if it cranks a little longer than normal, but we'll see. That's acceptable, you know, for this mileage and, you know, the condition of the engine. I'm okay with that. Before, if it ran for just, you know, 4 or 5 minutes, it wouldn't restart. It just couldn't make enough pressure. So I'm gonna let it sit here for just a little while longer. We're gonna try it again before I button it up, because, you know, it's a lot easier to go over stuff now than it is have to take the valve cover back off. You gotta wait the start light to go out. Yeah, I think I'm okay with that. I mean, 230,000 miles. Cranks a little bit longer than a fresh one, but it wasn't horrible. I'm okay with that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the valve cover back on. I've got everything plugged back in. Obviously, that's why it's running. And I'm gonna clean up the gasket area real quick with a towel and wipe it down good. And I'm gonna clean the valve cover. It's pretty dirty, so I'm gonna go ahead, and since the rain has quit now, I'm gonna take this over and pressure wash it real quick, get it cleaned up. So I'll get that, and then we'll get ready to go back on. Alright, so there it is, all pressure washed. I wanted to get all the oil residue off of there. Now I just sprayed it down with brake parts cleaner after I pressure washed it, so I'll let it dry there for a little bit. Make sure we got all this out. And then I'll wipe it down real good and we'll be ready to go back together. But it looks a lot better. May not look like it on camera, but it had some oil seepage on the sides, which the valve cover was somewhat loose when I went to take it apart, so we'll be sure to get it good and tight. Torque to spec, don't you know? So we'll get that ready to go and put it on. Oh, it's been sitting for a little while now while I was pressure washing, so figure let's go ahead and crank it again. See how long it takes to fire up. Well, like I said before, it cranks a little longer than I really hoped, but what do you expect for an old truck? So I'm gonna go ahead and get this cleaned up and we'll get it back on. If you remember before, once you started it up, it didn't want to fire back up. Wait for the start light to go out. Right there. Runs really nice. So then you could, in the mornings it would start, but you could run it for just a few minutes. As soon as it, I mean, the needle didn't even have to move before, and you'd shut it off, and you go to immediately restart it, and it wouldn't do anything. So I'm pretty happy with this. I'm pleased. I think we're in good shape. I think it's fixed. So that's another one done. And we did that, remember, just using the cluster, pulling the codes from the cluster. So worked out pretty well. So I guess that's the end for this one. I'll be starting on another one tomorrow. And I'm not sure. We'll talk about that in the next video. But this is it. It's all done. So for those of you guys that were looking for more diesel videos, I work on diesels, I just don't video them because, like most of the people I thought that watched our videos like to watch the Ford truck stuff, but we do an awful lot of this too. So if you guys want to see it, we'll do more of it. If you don't, we'll just stick with the Ford trucks. But that's it for this one, guys. If you like what we're doing, give us that thumbs up. If you want to, hit that subscribe button, leave your comments below. We'll catch you on the next one.